Hello, and welcome back to our series, Vertical SaaS, Fintech Disruption by a Thousand Cuts, sponsored by our friends at Pipe. This episode is about how vertical SaaS companies go to market. It's easy to assume, as I have in the past, that a great vertical SaaS platform basically sells itself. And there is some truth to that. Product-led growth is a big deal in vertical SaaS, but it's not enough. In this episode, Luke and I talked to Lacey Ford, Chief Marketing Officer at ABC Fitness. ABC Fitness is a vertical SaaS platform focused on serving businesses in the fitness and health industry, from massive multi-location gyms down to independent personal trainers. Given the breadth of different businesses that ABC Fitness serves across multiple countries, it's easy to see just how important a strong go-to-market strategy is for the company. In this episode, Lacey walks us through that strategy. We talk about her approach to customer segmentation, the importance of retention for vertical SaaS companies, how to build organizational alignment around go-to-market strategies and why that's so important, and how the emergence of generative AI is changing everything. I learned a lot from this conversation, and I know you will too. So, without further ado, here is Lacey Ford, Chief Marketing Officer at ABC Fitness. Okay, Lacey, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, happy to be here.
Well, we are delighted to have you. As I said in the intro, we're going to be getting into a lot of discussion around go-to-market and distribution in this episode. But before we do that, would love to start by setting some context, as we do at the beginning of each of these episodes. Can you tell us a little bit more about what ABC Fitness does and how the company's kind of evolved over time?
Sure. I like to say that we actually power the business behind the workouts. So ABC Fitness is the leading global provider of technology for traditional gyms, studios and boutiques, and personal trainers and coaches all around the world. In fact, if you've ever kind of checked in at places like Planet Fitness or Crunch, F45, or even your local studio, you've probably already experienced our technology. We provide the software and services that run gyms and studios behind the scenes. So think of everything from CRM to actually acquire new members and sales, to member applications for booking and check-ins, billing and payments to keep that revenue flowing, and ultimately get reporting and engagement that help our operators and our coaches grow their business. So if you think about it, it's got ABC is like the operating system for fitness, all tied together in one.
Awesome. Operating system is a term that's come up a few times in our discussions, and it seems to be the right mental model to think about this, right? And it sounds like, from what you described, you guys cover a pretty wide range of different size businesses within this vertical. Is that a fair assumption?
It's totally fair. In fact, we have what I would consider three very distinct segments. There's like that traditional big box gym segment. And if you think of that as the large enterprise, and then there's the studio and boutique segment, whether that's one location or multi-location. And then at the other end, you have personal trainers and coaches that we help with our app Trainerize, ABC Trainerize, that focuses specifically on that segment.
Awesome. Okay, that's great detail. And the other thing I want to ask you about, and we've asked everyone who's come on this series this same question because it's fascinating to Luke and I, is to help us understand a little bit more about your target customers, right? One of the things that's really cool in my mind about vertical SaaS is that there's just a level of detail that you know your target customers better than anyone who doesn't operate in that segment. So if you wouldn't mind, take us behind the curtain a little bit. What's a small, specific, subtle thing maybe that's important to know about serving those gyms or those studios or those independent, fitness coaches that someone not working in this vertical might not understand?
I love this question, and partly because I'm relatively new to the industry. And so coming into it with fresh eyes, and it is kind of like an unblanking of the canvas and finding what I'll learn. But there are actually three things that I'll touch on here that are very interrelated. The first and maybe most obvious one is that like owners and operators have a true personal passion for health and well-being. And they tend to really participate in the businesses that they run. It's not like they stand it up and leave it on the side. It's they are in it day to day, whether it's a 500 club franchise or a local Pilates studio, or they're just a personal trainer. It's really important to connect with them on a level that reflects both their identity as a business person, but also as a fitness enthusiast. Related to that is the fact that, I mean, there are certain industries that are relationship driven, but in this one in particular, it essential that it is more of a relationship and a partnership versus that kind of traditional software and services play. And I just can't underestimate or I can't underscore enough the importance of this relationship with our customers. And then the last piece that kind of ties it all together is that this is a true B2B to C play. And so we're serving our operators and coaches and their members and clients at the same time. Like I said, many of these owners are really hands on and they might coach the 5 a.m. class and then run payroll at 9 a.m. And they see that all of the tiny moments matter in terms of, check in, the ease of check in at the front desk. That's a growth lever for them. How you handle a declined payment, that's really important and can impact retention from our standpoint and our customers, and then ultimately for their customers. And where this gets really interesting is if we think about how those member expectations are shifting and how quickly the market is shifting around them. We know things like we've learned that their memberships are going up, like people are going back to gyms, and it's actually becoming the quote unquote third place community for a lot of people. We see that Gen Z is driving a tremendous amount of growth, and so they expect personalization, they expect a values alignment with their fitness facility, and things like wearables and biometrics, the rise of AI, which I'm sure we'll touch on. Our job is really to stay ahead of all of these trends, and so that we can anticipate some of the shifts and better position our operators, our personal trainers. To not just keep up, but really get ahead of that curve.
This is so interesting because a lot of the other SaaS verticals we talk to, they are service based in a sense, but if like the relationship you have with your plumber or electrician is very different, a relationship you have with your attorney is very different. Like it's something has gone wrong and you need something fixed usually when you have a relationship like that. But with you all, it's an everyday thing or 3 times a week thing to like actually maintain your mental health. Like if I don't get on I have an exercise bike in my office. If I don't get on it every single day, I don't feel right. Right. And for you to have a partner that like helps you on that like health journey, like that's such a tighter relationship than I'd seen in other verticals. Like that's striking here. It's pretty interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
That is our mission. At the end of the day, the mission of ABC Fitness is to partner with our customers and really help them turn their fitness visions into a seamless reality, and to do that and help them be their best selves through the fitness industry. So you're spot on.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, just to add one thought onto that, because I agree, Luke. I don't know anyone we've talked to so far, I don't think this point has come up, but it also sounds like even going up to these very large businesses, Lacey, that your customers, the owners or operators of these fitness facilities, it sounds like they really participate as customers in a really active, hands-on way, which probably gives them a different, I don't know, perspective on the experience that you're helping to bring to life, right? I mean, to your point, because I feel like obviously this space, it's all B2B to C in some sense, but the second B2C, that part I think is in some other verticals less obvious. Like it's more like we're the provider, you're the customer, and it's kind of two different sides, and you're trying to create as much empathy between those as possible. Where it sounds like with your target customer base, like they have no trouble putting themselves in the mind every day of someone going to a place and working out, because that's what they do, even if they are also running other aspects of the business.
That's exactly it. I mean, these are fitness enthusiasts. The majority go into the fitness business because they have a passion for this. And whether it's somebody who later in life found their passion for Pilates and then wants to open a Pilates studio, they understand their end customers' needs. And so as much as we can one partner with them to, I'll say, offset some of the operating burden, because they don't want to have to worry about things like billing and payroll and application management. We can take that off their plates, but we can also really partner with them to understand how they can grow their business, how they can reach out to other fitness enthusiasts, other people who have found Pilates later in life, to help them expand over time.
Yeah, yeah. I will say, as a side note, Pilates is incredibly difficult. I've started doing Pilates just a little bit, and I have so much more respect for people who do Pilates on a regular basis. I'm dying right now, Lacey, trying to do Pilates. So I can that example in particular resonates with me. So circling back to something you said earlier about those three different segments that you serve, I'm really curious, particularly in your role, how you think about your target addressable market, right? And obviously, this has come up on other episodes we've done as well. There's this challenge, I think, with building the perfect operating system, which is how narrow versus how broad do you sort of focus, right? And yeah, there's lots of different ways, I think, to think about that question. Like, which of these segments within this large vertical do we have a right to win with, that we're the best provider to serve? Which ones are sort of adjacent to each other where we might have some synergies or crossovers, versus segments where, hey, we think this is a good area for us to expand, but this is going to take some really new investment on our part, either from a product perspective or go-to-market perspective. How do you think about your overall addressable universe within this vertical, and then kind of where do you place your bets or where you decide to focus?
Great question. So, I mean, if you think about it, exactly where you started, the fitness and wellness industry globally is massive, over $100 billion market. And we don't look at that in abstract. We really focus, if you think about it in the term of serviceable addressable market and how we start to narrow that scope, we really focus on the areas where we can drive sustainable growth and positive impact on the people and the industry, and not just a short-term win for ABC. So part of the ways we slice and dice that, Sam, is one, very obviously, where is the fitness market opportunity? So if we look at, where there are in those segments, the personal trainer segments growing, the studio boutique segments, the big box gyms, where is there volume for that play? What regions have that penetration or have a growing TAM over time. And then we start to put parameters around it, like digital addressability and where technology adoption is starting to increase. I talked earlier about Gen Z driving it. So think of like Gen Z heavy areas, and we know that we would have a stronger prominence in those areas, bringing technology forward in the fitness community. And then we always look at product market fit, as you said. So those modalities, Pilates, where we have a strong right to win, where we have a lot of customers, very strong use cases, proven retention value, and just the opportunity to deliver true value to that market. And then ultimately looking at regional momentum, like where it makes sense in markets that have, where we can kind of place our bets and the entry is eased a little bit by existing traction. So an example of this year is the regions of APAC and EMEA. We established local leadership because it is important, even though we're a global company, you have to have that local feel. So going in with local leadership and deeper localization in those areas. And it really starts to focus us on, several key markets, but then modalities and ICPs within those.
It's interesting, like the way you talk about international expansion is the same for financial services for us, right? Like we have to put at least a product marketing manager on the ground that actually understands the customer there. You need an operational or regulatory person to be the person on the entity. And you also need just a local kind of like GM type leader, right? To go roll these products out. And so as hard as it is to just take the SaaS vertical components, you also have to do the same for any of the embedded financial services if you want to bring them along after. And it's very, very difficult from a regulatory and risk perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, these markets, there's a lot of individual challenges. And I want to get into the go-to-market stuff specifically because, naively from my perspective, as we started to dig into this topic, I think about vertical SaaS and I think, oh man, like the product is tailored exactly for these users, these particular segments. Like there's going to be a ton of product-led growth. Like it's just going to people are just going to sign up. Obviously, that's true, but not the entire story in terms of go-to-market and a strategy. So I'm hoping you can take us a little, again, behind the curtain on, from a go-to-market perspective, when you're planning out either going into a new geography, going into a new market, going into a new segment, or just trying to grow within any of the existing ones that you're in, how do you approach go-to-market as a vertical SaaS company? What are the different, I guess, levers that you can pull on when you're thinking about that strategy?
There's quite a few, and I like to think of them on the continuum of the buyer journey. So at the outset, on the acquisition side, it is about that segmentation and really honing in on your ICP. You talk about maybe the software is not exactly tailored for certain verticals. I think that is an exception with ABC, is that we are keenly focused on the fitness industry, and so that is, having that relationship with our customers and that knowledge base makes it easier, quite frankly, because we know what they're looking for. But the different types of operators in those segments, they buy very differently. So one of our levers is making sure that our go-to-market, the motion kind of matches and flexes with those segments. A multi-site franchise is going to need a very different buying approach and buyer journey, consultative enterprise style versus our personal trainer or coach segment, which is a PLG motion. They want things instantly. It has to be app-based. It is true SaaS-based. The second, kind of going along that journey, is the time to value and really focusing in on making sure that we have quick implementations, that people see easy wins. Often that helps us to build trust and credibility with those operators, and then opens the door for expansion over time, which is the third lever. If we think about expansion and on that, on that buyer's journey, if we think about their life cycle, coming in and then ultimately adding additional members or clients, maybe opening new locations, adding member engagement tools, personal training, wellness, analytics, and just kind of growing as they mature into the marketplace. And that's a really powerful lever for us because we're solving more problems over time in a very organic way. And then finally, partnerships. There is definitely, we understand that no company can do everything, and we don't want to expand too far beyond our core niche. But our integration and our partnerships with key players like MyFitnessPal or eGym start to make our platform and ecosystem even more valuable because we can reach a wider range.
Most SMBs don't need a loan officer. They need a runway. Pipe gives small businesses fast, flexible funding by turning future revenue into upfront capital, right inside the software they already use. If you're building in vertical SaaS, Pipe gives you embedded capital infrastructure that scales with your customers, designed for how real businesses grow. Learn more at pipe.com/fintechdays. It's interesting. One of the things you touched on there that I guess I just hadn't thought of, and Luke, keep me honest if we've talked to anyone else in this series who kind of has this same approach, but it just hasn't quite come up this way. The difference in sales motions for like a big enterprise, kind of big box store fitness company versus a studio, I mean, those are radically different go-to-market motions. I mean, having worked in B2B in the past and actually worked in marketing, I mean, the difference between self-serve for like a one-person studio versus enterprise consultative selling for like that big box, those could not be more different from each other, right? I mean, those are those are as different as like vodka and water. Like they are not at all the same, even though fundamentally they all fall under this kind of same go-to-market strategy.
It's not just that it's go-to-market differences. Those are fundamentally different products, right? Like at
Totally.
Square, there was an amazing dongle that can serve the seller like at the farmer's market, but you also have Square for restaurants that like all the way up. What I love about the ABC Fitness product is that you have you can serve an individual that starts out as a sole prop, like personal trainer that then goes and like rents some space and opens their first location and starts getting more clientele. And if they want to start franchising it or doing other stuff, like you guys can grow up with them all the way to the top. Like Square had a long journey of like not really being able to serve those that had multi-location, right? Even at Square. And so for ABC to have these multi-product thing and be able to go to market in any motion and actually let the customer grow with them through to becoming something way bigger, I think that's awesome.
I completely agree. And I think that actually ties into the thing I wanted to ask you next about, Lacey, which is retention, right? As you were kind of describing and as Luke just sort of illustrated with the Square example. I mean, how I guess, A, important is retention to your overall model and your approach? And then B, what are some sort of examples that you see of clients kind of growing from one stage to the next and like kind of going through that journey? Because I would imagine that to a degree defines not only like your retention and growth strategy, but then also has feedback loops for the product team and for other parts of the organization as well.
Yeah, this is an area I'm supremely passionate about. And it is actually one of the go-to-market levers I probably should have mentioned, but even before expansion. But at ABC, we really believe that retention compounds growth. Like we're in the business of both acquisition and retention on behalf of our customers. If you think of that,
Sure, yeah.
C motion. And so in an increasingly crowded FitTech market, keeping our existing clients is almost, is right there at par with getting new clients. And we work with some of the largest and most complex operators in the industry. So having leading customer service and support is just table stakes at this point. And we at ABC are very passionate about that and that partnership. But what really makes us different and sets us apart in the industry and what has helped us underscore our relationships in this industry is the way that we listen. And so you hit the nail on the head that some of our best product ideas and most impactful features, it really come directly from open conversations and dialogues with our customers about what they need to succeed. They give us this information. They're saying, this is the problem I'm having, and here's how we're addressing it. And then we see ourselves as an extension of every fitness business we partner with or trainer or coach that we partner with. And that means not only providing software, but there are times we'll sit with them and help them interpret their own data. We'll share insights from what we're seeing across our global customer base. We'll share insights on where the market is going and adapting to as the industry evolves. So, I certainly retention for us is not this reactive play of like, save the customer. It's really this ongoing partnership that compounds value over time. And to your latter question about, examples of this, I think one of the very interesting things, and I'll focus on the coach and personal training segment because it's the PLG motion. You are getting a constant feedback loop about what's working, what's not. Like your product tells you right away. And so, as coaches and trainers have asked for more help on, serving up plans for their clients and being able to schedule and take payments over the app. We recently launched Trainerize Business, which helps them with a lot of this administrative work. So there are examples all over the business of things like that have come to bear because they were straight from our customers.
Just one thing you mentioned is like the data insights. Like I'm so excited about each SaaS vertical being able to serve better data and insights. Like at Intuit, we served every industry when I was there. And we like from a data perspective, treated the restaurants and the landscapers the same. And so when you try to share data insights back, they're all kind of generic and like sort of helpful, but not. But when you know a vertical space, when you can narrow and say, hey, trainers like you in these geos are doing X, Y, Z to grow their business. And you could do this, that, and the other, like to help. Like it's just, there's so much knowledge you can bring to help people actually scale their small businesses. I think it's amazing. You just don't get that with these horizontal plays, right?
That I think that's why we've stayed. I mean, we are so passionate about the fitness industry. That's why we've stayed keenly focused on that because,
Yeah.
and we do with our tools have a wealth of knowledge about what's going on in the market in the industry and what modalities are coming up and where, where these operators should add to their gym and be able to offer these things. So it is data is such a powerful tool, and having the ability to leverage it to help our customers is even better.
That makes sense. The other thing, kind of going off of that I wanted to ask you about real quick is from a marketing and a go-to-market perspective, I'm curious how you guys think about sort of what value add you can bring to these providers. And maybe it is kind of like insights and content, but I've always felt like, really effective go-to-market strategies, it's not just about, hey, you should buy our stuff, but like as you're going through that buyer's journey, where are some spots where you add value for someone either thinking about starting a business in this area or thinking about expanding? Like, can you take us a little inside on, in terms of like value that you add beyond the product for these different segments based on your knowledge and your passion for this area? Are there any examples that jump to mind?
Yeah, there are two that I can touch on in this area, in terms of
Hmm.
where we add value. And I think again, I'll start with the personal training and coach segment. There is a whole Trainerized University that has courses on how to grow your business and get new clients and really help you thrive as a personal trainer and coach. And these people have come in because they have a passion for training and fitness. They may not know how to run a business. So giving people the education on how to run a business and enabling them to do so, that's one kind of easy example, I can think of. On the other side, in some of the other segments, we consistently do roundtable events with key customers. And that's bringing together our VIP customers and having them in a room. And again, it's an education session. Not only do we share what's going on with the industry, but they have the opportunity to talk with each other in this format to get learnings, to share ideas, and to really spur growth.
Like this theme has been kind of rampant across all of our conversations, but like you go back in history and folks would just pick a franchise model because they didn't know how to do the business. And if you like we use a Subway shop in a different example, like you just get the full playbook on the business, you get all the software, you get everything you need, and then you have to pay a massive fee to the franchisor, right? But like you are actually enabling these individuals and educating them, helping them craft their own vision of what their business is, go do it, and just pay a small software fee to actually run the whole thing, right? I think it's so empowering and so enabling that you don't have to go do the local like CrossFit franchise, like I'll just throw them under the bus, like the CrossFit franchise, you'd pay them a ton of money. You can go do your own and just actually like keep your own vision on what it should be. And like the software enables that. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a very different form of entrepreneurship. And I also, Lacey, really liked what you said about the personal trainers. I mean, that's come up a lot as well in our conversations where it's like, these people want to do this because they're passionate about this work. They might not know anything about running a business. And to the extent that they want to learn more or learn more in the course of, starting a business, it's also probably not the thing they want to spend more time on than they absolutely have to. Which is another thing I wanted to ask you about, actually. And you kind of brought this up earlier with like the product feedback, especially for those smaller customers. What are some of the metrics that you guys look at in terms of measuring like the success that you're having in engaging customers, retaining customers? Like what metrics kind of rise to the surface as ones you really focus on and try to measure against?
So on the current customer side, you're hitting on some of them already. Like there's
Mhm.
our core metric is always going to be around retention. So
Yeah.
how are their customers staying with us, and
Mhm.
are they growing over time? But there are some leading indicators that feed into that, and so we watch things like engagement, and it may sound very simple, but are they engaging with our email sends or
Sure.
our quarterly webinars or whatever the case may be? Are they actually taking an active role in it? But then also on the software side, are they engaging with the features and functionality that we're rolling out? And we're watching that to see, are there hot points that we need to double down on? Are there stuck points that we can help fix? And then ultimately, really measuring customer health. So we have the ability to, kind of measure sentiment across our customer bases and just make sure that we have our finger on the pulse of our customer base to make sure that we're doing the right thing and we're partnering with them appropriately.
Yeah, really listening to your customers. The other thing that ties into that I also wanted to ask you about is sort of experimentation, right? And you've talked a little bit before about like the market is changing, and I think that is really interesting actually, because I think I saw something recently that was saying that maybe somewhat surprisingly, there's been a real boom the last couple of years in just engagement with the fitness industry. Like it's really growing. It's growing across different segments. Obviously, Gen Z is driving a lot of that. I saw something that was saying that kind of like millennial and Gen X women in particular are like a big growth segment right now. So like there are these changes that are happening. Obviously, a lot of technology is changing the way people engage with fitness. How do you sort of experiment with and test different go-to-market approaches, different marketing campaigns? Like what's kind of from a mechanical perspective, like how do you approach doing that, especially given all the different segments you serve and then working across different geographies as well?
Yeah, really, experimentation is part of our DNA as a company. We have one of our core values is growth mindset, and so it really experimentation is just part of our core.
Yeah.
But making it happen, to me, is kind of pretty basic, and there's no magic formula to it. But a couple of things that I always encourage with my team, and I'll start there, is to make sure to look at things differently. And it's really easy to get stuck in the old ways of doing things, especially people who have either been in the industry for a while or have been in a job for a while. It's like very easy just to get caught up in the day to day. I'm lucky and fortunate because I'm relatively new, and so I bring in a very different perspective to the industry and the role. But I encourage my team members just to poke around, like go to different departments, poke around in areas you might not be as familiar with, and challenge the current status quo and start to ask why, or maybe more importantly, ask why not. Encouraging others to step out of their comfort zone and just try something different, even if
Yeah.
it's on a very small scale. And then implementing that, I would say making it easy, make it very easy to spin up a test. It can be one variable. You think a lot about marketing and message testing and whether the subject line works or whether the button, the language on a button works in terms of website optimization. So you can start
Totally.
very small and iterate over time and then be willing to stop it fast too. You've heard fail fast. So if it's not working, great, pull it, do something else. If it's winning, great. Now double down and see what else you can do. And then I mentioned, the PLG motion on one side gives us the opportunity as a company on a broad
Yeah.
scale to test a lot very quickly, to get them to launch a feature on the app and see if see if there are takers or not, or if we hit the mark. And if it's not working, we iterate. And then we fuel things as a broader company with things like hackathons. And so just getting people to experiment with new ideas and new technology and create something that then we can ultimately feed back to product or take to market.
Like just from a company organizational and leadership perspective, the hackathon is one of the greatest things ever, because like Pipe is fully remote. So we get people together to build stuff, like to do hackathons, usually for features or stuff that's going to help our customer. We actually like to bring our customers in and like experiment with them there to say, hey, use the software, like what's working, what's not. And then you literally hack a solution during that week while you're there, and the team gets to know each other better. They're working directly with customers and talking to them like in person, and you're actually shipping stuff for them at the same time. Like that's the greatest motivational thing for everyone in our company, at least, like just to get together and like talk to the customers you're actually building stuff for right now. It's just amazing. If you guys aren't doing that, you absolutely should. Like get the customers into the hackathons, honestly.
It's so fun. And seeing these ideas that people come up with, people are so creative, and you let them operate without guardrails, and it's amazing. It's so smart.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I think the other part about that, and maybe Lacey, you can comment on this real quick, is there's also a real value to like cross organizational collaboration, right? Because these things can get very siloed, but as you've been talking about, I mean, it sounds like there's a very strong loop between marketing, go to market, product, customer success, like all of these different functions need to kind of reinforce each other. What's the kind of internal approach to sort of driving that cross organizational collaboration?
Yeah, it is such a critical one. And I've never thought of go to market as just marketing and sales. It really
Right.
is that loop of product marketing, sales, customer success. Um, and the way that we build connective tissue around that, it comes from bringing together the right people very early on and having a shared narrative and shared metrics that come out of that. So everyone's solving for the same customer outcome versus working in silos. And we kind of approach that across each of the segments by having that continuum for each of the segments. So because we know that connective tissue isn't one size fits all, as we've talked about.
Right.
So
Right.
we really need to make sure to flex the motion, and the alignment has to flex as well. But I think the constant here is the customer and the focus on the customer. And alignment isn't just about how we set up the internal org charts or operating rhythm. It's about making sure our customer is still at that center so that when we can close the loop appropriately. And so everybody is getting as close to the customer as possible in terms of listening to sales calls, leveraging research, looking at support asks, and really feeding all of those insights back into the beginning of the loop for product and marketing and growth. Because when you close that loop, that alignment doesn't feel forced at all. It actually starts to become very natural because everyone can see how their work is tying back to the customer success.
It's so good to hear you say that, because that's how we design the whole team here at Pipe. Like if you have high EQ leaders that actually know their functional like space very well, but also really care about the customers, the cross-functional stuff just happens automatically, right? Because everybody's there to help the customers. You're there for a mission and a purpose that you're all aligned on, and you actually care. And so the cross-functional stuff is easy. But so you have to actually set the team up in the right way, hiring the right people to actually make it way easier. And if you have dysfunction, it's probably because you may not have the right people that you don't care about the customers enough, right? So interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, the customer ultimately solves it is such an interesting, and again, it's kind of the theme of this episode. Like, sounds simple, harder to do in practice, but that's what makes all this stuff work. Lacey, before we let you go, you teased this at the beginning, and we did definitely want to ask you about AI because obviously. It's changing a lot of different aspects of how all businesses run, how they go to market. Obviously, we talked a lot about it in this series with vertical SaaS companies across a bunch of different dimensions. But for you and your job, how are you seeing AI, generative AI, large language models sort of reshaping customer acquisition and retention? And, how would you encourage, kind of marketers or go-to-market folks to think about that?
Yeah, what's funny about this question is if you just asked less than a year ago, I feel like the answer would have been very different because
Totally.
last year, people just started talking in Q4 about how these LLMs were changing the nature of digital marketing. Paid search is becoming more inefficient. Organic, traffic is dropping, and how do you work with it? But now, fast forward, 6-8 months, and it has become such table stakes as a way to supplement activity and make sure that you're going to market appropriately. And it's completely reshaped our work. And the shifts that I've seen is, if I'll bucket it into a couple of categories, the first big shift is around like the time to draft. The time that it used to take to draft has now shifted and accelerated to the time to decision. AI has helped us unblank the canvas. Sometimes getting started is the hardest part. And now,
totally.
When you think about writing a brief or messaging, competitive intelligence, et cetera, it's really like you have a starting point, and now you can accelerate and make sure that it is appropriate in terms of insights and creative judgment on that.
Yeah.
The second big shift is on personalization, and it's mass personalization at scale. And that's actually feasible. Before it's like what we called personalization before was probably like Luke, this might ring true to you too. It's like you have some copy and you're going against different verticals and like, oh, unplug this vertical in it, plug in this vertical in it.
Totally. Swap this word out for this word. Yeah. Right.
And so now it is actually a true personalization because you can get to things like that customer sentiment that I was talking about and know the problems that people are facing. And so just the ability to be responsive in a personal way is tremendous. And then the third is really around what we were talking about, kind of that prediction and action loops. You can surface churn and signals early. You can react to them, be responsive to them. Again, at the PLG, we can serve things up, react to the response. If it's working really well, double down and measure it against real outcomes.
AI is going to have such a massive impact on all SaaS vertical businesses. So you're talking about the marketing side and your internal operational side, but like for you all to add AI tools that make the personal trainers' time get saved and help them spend more time with their customers, like that's the future. That's going to be amazing to leverage those tools to make it feel like your personal trainer has a team of 4 supporting them as they're running your software. Right? It'll be pretty amazing.
Yeah, we're excited about the AI component and the innovation that's on its way.
Yeah, well, and kind of touching on the last point, it'll just make it that much more imperative to experiment rapidly and prototype and hack and just continually get people together. Because as you said, all of this is changing on a pretty rapid basis, which makes it fun. It's fun for all of us to get to work in this space. Lacey, we'll leave it there. We could do another hour on this very easily. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise in this. Really great to hear what's happening in the fitness space, what's happening from a go-to-market perspective within the vertical SaaS space, and really appreciate you sharing everything with us today.
Great. Well, thanks for having me on in the conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Lacey.
Thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by Pipe. Pipe helps vertical SaaS platforms unlock fast, flexible capital right inside their product. Learn more at pipe.com/fintechtakes.